G'day, welcome back. I'm Nick Dingle. We're in lesson number 9 and we're looking at strings. Now this one is going to be a fairly quick breeze through of all the different things you can do with strings and some examples at the end, obviously, to show you what these things do. Now, just to rehash very quickly, strings are just a single data type in our vast array of different data types that we can use in Python. So you've got strings and integers and floats and booleans and lists and all sorts of things. Strings are just one of those, and their whole purpose is to store letters and numbers and sentences and words. The thing about that is, though, strings, you can use them for whatever you want. You can use them to store names or usernames or passwords or paragraphs, encoded messages, even whole website source code, because it's just plain text. You can do that, okay? That's how good strings are. Now, let's quickly break it open and have a look at the guts inside of a string, because strings are named for exactly what they are, and that is a sequence or a string of individual characters. And the really cool thing about that is we can actually access each letter in a string one by one. Okay, and this is done through a thing called indexing. All right, now to quickly break it down, here's my example for you. So I've made a variable called name, set it to dingo teach, and as you can see, I've got 1, 2, whoopsie doodle, go back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 letters inside this string. Okay, every single character within that string is in an index. So an index is literally just like, what place is it in? Is it the first letter, the second letter, third letter? But because we're weird as programmers, we don't start at 1, we start at 0, which is where 90% of programming memes come from. So the letter D is the first letter, so that's in position 0. And then I is in position 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, all the way up to H, which is in position number 9. Now, technically there's a 10th character, which is like the character that tells you the end of a string, but I think we don't need to get that technical today. Now, jumping into it, what does this mean? Well, it means we can actually access one letter or a portion of our string at a time by specifying what index we want to access, okay? So you can't use this to change the letters in your string, but you can use it to read one letter or a couple of letters at a time. So let's jump into good old Visual Studio Code at this point. So strings video.py. And what we are going to do is we are going to have a look at name equals dingo teach, whoopsie doodle, like so. And if we want to print a single character, we use the print function. And if we wanted the whole thing, actually, we could just print name. And hitting play, you can see that it just prints the entire string in one hit. But if we just wanted a single letter, you use square brackets directly after the name of the string. And then you specify the index. So if you want the first character, you must specify 0. And when you hit play, you'll notice that it just prints the letter D. Okay. Same thing for if you want the second character, we specify index number 1, which is the second letter in our string. And we can keep doing that one by one by one. But let's say we want to print a couple of the characters in the middle for whatever reason. Okay. I don't know what it might be, because once again, I can't think of an example off the top of my head. Let's say we want to print the G and the O. Well, what you do is what's called a splice. Now, a splice is the ability to take a few things in the middle of a group, okay? So this has got 10 characters, and I want to go 0, 1, 2, 3, and to 4. Now, the important thing to note about a splice is that you specify the beginning index, and then you have to specify the index at the end plus 1. So what I mean by that is you'd be tempted to type 4 to go 3, 4, but it's actually 3, 5. Okay, it's always one above what you need. So let's hit play, and you'll see it has the word go. Okay, so even though letter 5 is the T, because remembering 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it never includes that number, because if it's just 3, 4, we're just going to get a single letter G. Okay, I hope that makes some sense. The other really cool thing about these index or this splicing is we can specify negative values. If I go -1, what that does is it wraps around. Okay, so instead of accessing something that doesn't exist, it actually goes backwards by one character. And so that'll print the letter H. So you can specify -2, and that will print the letter C. Okay, so there's some really cool little things that you can do with splicing. So if somebody types in their name, then you can muddle it up or like find an anagram or some kind of really cool things like that. You can even use this to determine if something is a, what do you call it, reversible. I'm forgetting the word here. Anyway, it'll come back to me later after this video, I'm sure, where you can read something forwards and backwards like race car. Okay, so with that said and done, that's splicing, okay? Have fun with it, play around. You can go absolutely nuts with it so you can access one bit at a time. Now, that's not the only thing you can do with strings. I briefly mentioned in our operators video that there are operators for strings. And namely, there are two really important operators, okay? The first one, which is the plus symbol, we call that concatenation. It's or concatenate for short. It's very important, and all it basically means is you take the first string, you take your second string, and you put them together. And that's it. That's concatenation. The other thing is called repetition. So if I take a string and I use the times or the multiply operator and then put a number, it repeats that string that number of times. So quick example, hello concatenate world ends up as hello world. Hello times 5 or repeat 5, it just does the word 5 times. So let's have a look at what this looks like. Let's go print name plus is me. So this is a concatenate. Even though it's a variable on one side and a literal string on the other side, it's still concatenate because it's adding two strings together. So you press play and it says Dingo teaches me. Like so. And then if we use the repeat, then it will take our string and repeats the value of that string 5 times. So we get a whole heap of gobbledygook. So that one is an interesting, very niche time you might use that one. But there's a couple of examples of different operators for strings. Okay. And the rest of this slideshow is just big tables, so bear with me. The next one is string functions. This is probably the most important bit when it comes to strings, is what can you do with a string is what's the most useful about it. So we've got 4 very important functions. There are more, but I'm trying to keep it simple again because this is introductory stuff. There is len, which is short for length. There is upper, lower, and title. You might notice that len is the only one that you write a little bit different, and I'll get to it in a moment. But essentially, len tells us how many characters appear in a string. So if I type len and put a string in it, it'll return 5 in this case, because hello has got 5 characters. Okay, upper, it takes your string and it converts every letter to uppercase. So hello will be converted to hello. Then lower does the exact same thing, but opposite. Okay, that was not a very good way of explaining. It does the opposite of upper. So it takes all your letters and it converts them to lowercase. Hello. And then title case is usually used for things like names and stuff like that. It will take a string, convert the first letter to an uppercase, and the rest are lowercase. So in this case, I've butchered the word hello and put a couple of capitals in the middle, and title will return a very straightforward, regular hello. And it only capitalizes the first letter in this case. So let's jump back. Let's have a squiz. Let's do print. And the first thing we'll do is length of my name. Now, the reason it's that len is different to all the other ones is because len can be used on a multitude of things, not just strings. It can be used on lists and other stuff that we'll get to in the future. So let's say I do length of my name. It will spit out 10 because there's 10 letters inside my name variable. So the next one, let's do the upper. So let's go name.upper, like so. Dingo teach. Now, one really important thing to know about these uppers and these lowers is they don't affect the contents of your variable. What they're actually doing is they're converting name to uppercase and returning that to print, but it's not actually overriding the original value. So what I mean by that, let me quickly print name just by itself down the bottom and press play. You'll notice that it's still how it was originally at the top. Upper makes a copy, then uppercases it all, rather than uppercasing it and storing that straight away. If you want to store the uppercase version, you need to use the assignment operator by going name equals name dot upper. Okay. That will then produce an uppercase and store it or replace the original value. So that's just something I like to make note of with my students. Then we'll do lower like so, and you'll see we've got an upper and a lower. And finally, I'm not going to use name for the title example because it already is. Let's change it like so. So name dot title and play. And you can see it just goes to one capital letter at the start. Now there are hundreds of functions that you can play with. And if you type in the name of your string and put the lovely dot modifier, you can go through and find a whole bunch. And there's even extensions that people have made for Python that add more functionality to strings if you need it, obviously. Now, two quick things before the end of this video. A couple of extra string functions. Actually, there's two more slides, but a couple of extra string functions. Let's say, for example, you are looking for a word within a larger string or a certain character or something of the sort. Okay, this is a very common occurrence. You're trying to find the position of a smaller word in a larger string. Well, that's when you would use the find function. And the find function simply takes a big string and looks for a smaller string. And it will tell you the position or the index that that smaller string appears. If it cannot find that string, it will return a -1. And that's because -1 isn't a proper index. I did use it before, but just ignore that a little bit. Okay, because indexes start at 0 properly. -1 is sort of a standard in programming world to say doesn't exist. Okay, the other one that we'll quickly go through is replace. So let's say you want to get rid of something out of a string. You say, here's my big string, S1, and I want to replace a small string, S2, with a third string. Okay, so you can use this to replace letters. You can use it to replace swear words in a string, like if you want to implement a chat filter. You can even use it to remove words or letters from a string. All right, so let's quickly look at those as an example. So print, and we'll use the find one first. So name.find, and let's put teach. Okay, we're looking for the word teach inside of Dingo teach. Okay, so let's hit play, and it tells us it starts at index number 5, which is spot on because that's exactly what I said it was going to be previously. You can do single characters as well. We can find the letter I. Interesting. So you'll see it says -1, and I've just realized it's because it's a capital I. So that gives a good example of that one. Let's just do the letter A. There we go, 7. All right, so that's the find. What about good old replace? So let's do dot replace, and now it wants 2 strings, old and then new. So how many are we going to replace it with? Let's replace anytime. What letter can we get rid of? I've only got one of each letter in my thing. That's a bit boring. Let's get rid of the letter E and replace it with the letter A. So now it's Dingo Tatch, okay? Or if I wanted to, I could take the letter D and replace it with nothing, okay? Empty, okay? And you can see it didn't work because once again, I forgot E is a capital. Now it's Ingo Teach, okay? Again, notice that it doesn't affect the original value. It simply changes it and returns it to the print function. Okay, so those are the find and replace functions. There is just one more concept I want to talk about with functions and we're done, and that is string comparisons. Now, string comparisons are when you're comparing 2 different strings, and there's a various number of ways that you can do it. The first one is are they equal to? The second one is are they not equal to? Third one is does this string start with another string? And does string 1 appear in string 2? Okay, so just to quickly break them down, this one is exactly how it sounds like when we did our comparison operators. It checks if S1 and S2 are equal. Are they the same? And in our example, dog equals cat would be false because they're not even close. Okay, for the not equal to, it just simply checks if they are different in any way, shape, or form. Dog doesn't equal cat is true because they are slightly different. Well, they're massively different. So the answer is yes. Now, S1 dot starts with S2. So it checks if our first string starts with our second string. So it's a little bit like find, but in this case, we're just wanting to see if it starts with something. Let's say we have to find all the people's names that start with the letter H. Then you can use starts with to check all your different names. So S equals hello. Does S start with hell? Yes, it does. Okay. And the last one is very much the exact same as the find function, but instead of returning true and false, instead of returning the index, it just says true or false. So in this case, is S1 in S2? Okay, so in this one, I've said S is equal to hello. Is B in S, my string? And the answer is no. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at some examples and we're done for this video. So the first one we should look at is the equals operator. So if, let's just do the dog and cat. Hey, dog is equal to cat, print, dogs are cats. Like so, you hit play and you can see that this doesn't come up because, well, dog doesn't equal cat, does it? That's not right. So this if statement doesn't work. What if dog doesn't equal cat? Okay, print, dogs aren't cats. And you can see that one does print because, yeah, they are not equal to each other. It's important to note as well that capitalization does actually matter. So let me say I do dog equals dog, like so. Dogs are dogs. Well, it turns out that dogs are not actually dogs. So this is false because capital D makes these strings different. Even though they're so gosh darn close, they're still not exactly the same. All right, let's do the starts with. So word, oh no, let's just use Dingo Teach again. If name starts with, ooh, I made a mistake. It's a little w. Dingo. And print, hello, Dingle. Hit play, and you can see down here it says, hello, Dingle. Okay, because name does start with Dingo. I'll have to update my slideshow. Now, last one, if go in name. Go is in your name, mate. Hit play. I'm a goose. I did it again, okay? Go is capitalized. Why can't my brain just retain that information while I'm recording? Anyway, there we go. Plain and simple. Now, if you wanted to avoid those kind of issues, let's say you did type in the lowercase go and you're running your code and you're like, oh, it's not working. Why? And then you find out the user's like typing every second letter as a capital or whatever. You can get around this by using our lower or upper function, depending on which one you like. Okay, if you just put, if go is in name dot lower, purely because I've written it in lowercase on the left, then it will actually work. It'll bypass any of those problems. It doesn't matter what capitals they type in, it's now going to fix that up for you. So this is a giant video focusing purely on strings to get you into the mood of when you see all these different things in play. There is actually one last little thing that I wanted to go through, and I was hesitating if I was going to include this, purely because it introduces a concept that I want to cover next, and that is looping, okay? Let's say I need to go through a string, and I need to go through one letter at a time to check or do something to those strings. Maybe I need to move the letters up by one because I'm making like a really cheap, crappy encoding system. Then we can use a loop to go through one letter at a time. So we're going to use what's called a for loop. All right. And the way you structure this is you put for, then the name of a new variable. So let's call this letter. And then you put the word in, just like it was here, name. And we put a colon like if statements, and then we go to the next line. So for every letter in name, what are we going to do? For me, I'm just going to print the letter to the screen. So if I press play, what you should see is that every single letter gets printed one by one by one, like that, on separate lines. So that is a loop, very quick introduction to loops. And what it does is for every single letter in the name, it'll run line 38 for each letter. It'll do the D, and then it moves on to the I, and it loops for each letter that's in there. So I don't know, why might you do something like this? Because you can do some weird stuff. Let's get rid of the end, or let's put a dash in between each letter, and now you can split up your words into little dashes or something. It's entirely up to you how you want to use it, of course. There we go. I made a really crappy encoding system using my little for loop here. So guys, thanks for watching the video. I'll catch you in the next one.